All right. Thank you guys for coming and attending. Today, we have a phenomenal speaker. I'm excited. I've been looking forward to this. It's been circled on my calendar because I like to learn people's story. I like to learn who they are. The man behind the mask, the man behind the Instagram posts. You know, I had to censor him for a week. He started taking his shirt off, and I said, "Listen, I can't do that. Got to censor him for a week." But I was able to bring him back. The clinical care consultant for Johnson & Johnson Vision. And he has a story that's bigger than that. And I would love to learn his advocacy, what he cares about, because you have to have a passion for some of these things. You have to care about what you're doing. And he certainly does that. And the advocacy work that he's doing, I'm excited to hear and learn more about. Dr. Devin Sasser, the floor is yours, sir. You're muted.
Give me one second. I'm just going to share my screen with everyone. And we'll do a... All right. Can everyone see that screen there?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, excellent. Yes. I love to know that I hear that I've been muted on Instagram. That's my mission in life, is to have people mute me. But I mute people all the time, so I think that's hilarious. But yeah, so again, my name is Devin Sasser. On behalf of myself and also Johnson & Johnson Vision, I'd like to thank you and express gratitude to the Black Eye Care Perspective for allowing me some time to join you all tonight. I believe I've had the pleasure to meet almost everyone on this call in person at some point or another over the last few years. But for those of you who have not had the pleasure to do so with yet, I do look forward to doing that in the next few years or next couple of months, depending on these meetings that we have going on there. So I wanted to use my time tonight to share a little bit about my personal story and some more information on my journey into the kind of advocacy space, as well as kind of point out some common mission, and also how working with Johnson & Johnson has served to amplify that mission in a sense. But before that, a little bit more about my background. I am currently practicing in Maryland, just outside of the DC metro area at the Wilmer Eye Institute at Johns Hopkins. Been there for just under a year now, so still pretty fresh. There I do practice full scope optometry all day long. See everything under the sun there from start to finish there. So it's challenging, but fun. Challenging being the main word there, but it is a lot of fun to be able to flex some of those optometry muscles that have kind of become atrophied after a couple of years out of school. But in my 8 years since I've graduated from UMSL in 2015, I've done a little bit of everything. So I've done corporate optometry in both as an associate and also as a sub-leasee. I've done associate in private practices. I've done eye exams in correctional facilities, various speaking engagements, things like that. Really trying to maximize all the fun things that we're able to do within optometry. I think a lot of people take that for granted. And I kind of used my first couple of years outside of school as a kind of explorative phase. And so I'm in a good place now, but again, I'm sure I'll switch it up in the next couple of years and try something different, because that's the benefit of being an optometrist. But as far as my personal mantra, as Dr. Ramsey alluded to, on Instagram and on social media, I am very much into the idea of not making optometry my entire life. I like to mix things up. I really enjoy, traveling, eating. Tennis is my favorite sport, and so one of my bucket list items is to attend all of the tennis Grand Slams. So for those of us who are unfamiliar about how Grand Slams work, there are four. There's the US Open, there's Wimbledon, there's the French Open, and then there's the Australian Open as well. And I've been to 3 of the 4. So Australia is the furthest away, so that's going to require a little bit more time. So the goal for that is 2025 after the Olympics. But I'm looking forward to that. I was actually, as an aside, able to see Coco Gauff win her first Grand Slam at the US Open final. I was there in the nosebleeds. I had to have some Kleenexes, but I was there, and that was a kind of a life highlight for sure. But yes, I'm from Dallas, Texas. I spent most of my time growing up there, but I did move around a little bit. I was an Army brat, so I moved from places like Oklahoma and Louisiana. And there was an ongoing joke between my brothers and myself, and also my former stepfather, about him maybe not being the best military personnel, because we always seemed to live in the most kind of unsatisfactory places. While my friends were living in Germany and living in Hawaii, I was living in Oklahoma, so that wasn't the best experience. But Texas is my home. I've been there. I lived there pretty much my entire life up to 18. So that's what I claim there. Now in high school, I was what you consider to be a nerdy athlete. So I was balancing things like the academic decathlon with regional and state track and field meets. I was never coordinated enough to really do anything other than track. So that was my sport, just kind of brute speed, nothing else. But I did decline an opportunity to run track and field in college because I wanted to follow my then girlfriend down to New Orleans for school, which if you know anything about my personal story, then you know why that last sentence is a bit hilarious. But she ended up not going. I did. And in the spirit of LeBron James, I took my talents down to the Bayou down in New Orleans, where I attended what some people call the preeminent HBCU, Xavier University of Louisiana. It's also, some people call it the most significant HBCU in the realm of healthcare. And by some people, I mean myself and people who went there. But had a great experience at Xavier. When I was there, I was the Student Government Association president. And that was really my first opportunity to think about advocacy, think about other people's, a picture that's bigger than myself, advocating for students, working with administration, and really kind of seeing how advocacy works. But it was a very small intro. As a student, you only have such power, but it was a great kind of introduction into how things should be working as far as advocating for others. I was inspired at that time by Barack Obama. He had won his first term my maybe junior year in college. And I mean, I was running for everything at that point, president, vice president, like, I don't care what I get. I just want to be involved. And I was kind of had a battery in my back after he won. And I was really into the student leadership. And that was kind of my springboard to everything that I essentially do now. So, yeah, but I actually came into optometry late in my junior year in college. I was in a bit of a spiral, trying to figure out what my next steps would be. And it wasn't until I came into two different mentors that I was able to see optometry as a sort of a path forward for me. And one of those optometrists was Dr. Larry Tarrant, who was a local optometrist from my hometown. All he did was allow me to shadow him for a couple of days in his practice, but they were monumental days because I got to see optometry for the first time. Because before that, I had an eye exam, which we'll talk about here in a bit, but I didn't really know what optometrists did and how they differed from other eye care professionals. So that was the first real experience. And that second mentor was by the name of Dr. Tyrus Dimachet, who practices in the Houston metro area. And he was not only a Xavier grad, but he was also a fraternity brother of mine. And so he was introduced to me by our then dean of students, because that dean saw that I was spiraling, and he decided to help me out by introducing me to Tyrus. And Tyrus was really kind of my rock through my discovery phase of optometry, applying and kind of figuring out where I wanted to go. Also kind of communicating with me through my years of optometry school, every year checking in, just kind of seeing how I was doing. And then also when I was graduating, he was kind of advising me on next steps and how I should move about and kind of enter the workforce. And so invaluable. I always say, anyone who sits on a panel with me or sees me speak, I always say that I'm an optometrist because of mentorship. So that's why I really commend what the Black Eye Care Perspective does, because you guys are essentially creating a space for mentorship and really kind of getting people in the loop as far as eye care is concerned. So that's what Tyrus was for me back then, and that's what you all are for students across the country now. So I commend that. Now, as far as advocacy is concerned, my appreciation for advocacy came about during my second year of optometry school, when my classmates and I were asked to attend the Missouri Optometric Association's Legislative Day in Jefferson City, Missouri, which, beyond learning the state capitals as a seventh grader, never thought I'd be in Jefferson City, Missouri. And I honestly had nothing invested in the opportunity to go down there. I saw it as an opportunity to not have to go to neuroanatomy, which was my least favorite course by far. I said I go and I attend. I get the free breakfast and get the free travel and have a day off from school. But it wasn't until I stepped foot onto the Capitol grounds and began to attend meetings with various veteran ODs that I really start to see that what we have as a profession was not given to us. We've had to work for everything that we've had. And at that point in time, I've heard the old adage a million times about optometry being a legislative profession and how we have to work for what we have, but it never really clicked for me until that day. And it really allowed me to embrace the significance of the work that we have to be able to do to both sustain and progress the profession that essentially I had chose at that point. And it also allowed me to sort of recognize the gravity of my then AOSA elect position. And it gave me the spark to push to new heights and becoming the first African-American SGA president, an African-American AOSA president, nationally speaking. And at the time, I had no idea that I was the first, but I just decided that I was going to keep pushing to be in the mix when it comes to making decisions that affect students across the country and ultimately doctors across the country. So that was my first kind of professional step forward in advocacy. But that single day of advocacy with the MOA is the reason why I sort of remain steadfast in my efforts today. Only now it looks a little bit different, which I will talk about some more here in a bit. But to this day, I do continue to work closely with the legislative side of things with the MOA as a part of their legislative committee. And I also work nationally with the AOA as a part of their volunteer structure. Now, when we're talking about advocacy, it does get a bit tricky. It gets a bit tricky because when we're advocating on behalf of an entire profession, we tend to think of things sort of big picture, right? Things like we need to practice to the full scope of our education, or we need to ensure that all patients have access to quality care. But in any profession, embracing diversity and considering the perspectives of all of its members is essential to sustainable progress, fostering innovation, and creating more inclusivity. Oftentimes, as we're pushing the profession forward, we fail to acknowledge and actively seek out those diverse perspectives. But as we all know on this call, ensuring that those perspectives are heard are keys to missing blind spots as we're pushing the progression forward. And so it's very important that we are continuing to listen and invite different voices and different backgrounds into those rooms. And that's really what I kind of gear myself towards to these days. So that's kind of where I am these days, at the intersection of kind of globally looking at advocacy, but also locally looking at advocacy, keeping in mind that working within the constructs of a kind of a well-oiled machine in the way of like an AOA is important, but it's also important to be unafraid to shake the table a little bit and remind people that we need to be able to have representatives that represent all of our members and all optometrists and eye care providers throughout the country. And so being that face in that room sometimes, as I'm sure plenty of us know, sometimes in those rooms, we're the only face that looks like ours. And it's important when you're in those positions, to be able to stand up and say what needs to be done. And that's really what I've kind of geared my energy towards these days. I used to be a lot more shy about that in my AOSA days. I was trying to do everything right and trying not to be a bad representation or somehow drop the ball, because who knows when the next time that was going to happen. But these days, as I become more settled in frankly, it's more settled in my Blackness, but also more settled in my profession, I really take any opportunity that I get to kind of speak up and tell people how important it is to have more diverse voices in these rooms. And so nowadays, I've been very fortunate to mix things up a little bit by working alongside initiatives such as the Transitions Diversity Advisory Board, which also hosts several members of the leadership team from the Black eye care perspective, along with an array of other diverse voices who are looking to create more representation of Blacks and Hispanics in all areas of eye care. In addition to that, a lot of my volunteer work is geared towards cultivating leadership development within the profession by serving on the AOA's Leadership Development Committee. And we do a program that is dedicated to engaging in opportunities for leadership growth for optometrists all throughout the country. And just as an aside, we were talking before the call started, Drs. Essence Johnson and Dr. Jeanette Pepper were down in St. Louis a couple of weeks ago with myself and other members of the 2.0 program for the Leadership Development Committee. And they did a session on allyship on behalf of the Black eye care perspective, and they killed it. It was one of my favorite parts of the entire weekend. There was a session where we had to talk to someone for 3 minutes without them making any type of gesture to respond to us. And yeah, I was laughing with my partner because I literally told her my entire life in 3 minutes. She couldn't tell me anything back, and it was very interesting, that whole session. But that was a great opportunity for us to partner with Black eye care perspective and bring those diverse voices in that room. And I know several people who after that have told me that they really enjoyed that part of our session, as far as how we were able to interact and how the difference in the tone and everything was just a great and welcome experience for everyone. So
Dr.
So both
Sasser,
of these experiences.
would you recommend that program to other people? Because they've asked us to recommend people to the program, but could you, I know you're going through your whole thing here. I saw you
Yeah.
had some other slides there, so I'm excited to get through your other slides as well. But would you kind of talk about that program since you mentioned it, just to maybe some people on the call may want to sign up for it?
Yeah, yeah, of course. So we have two programs. We have the 1.0 program and we have the 2.0 program. The 1.0 program is generally geared to people who are 0 to 5 years-ish out of school. We have some people who are definitely out of 5 years, but the goal of the 1.0 program is really to sort of reactivate people who kind of taken a step back from volunteerism and working within the confines of organized optometry, people who've kind of gotten to the rigmarole of going to work, taking care of their family, going home, and not really thinking about kind of the broader picture, which was literally me for about 4 years after I graduated. And so for that program, we're really focusing on kind of developing more basic leadership skills. So we're talking about public speaking courses, negotiation skills, a kind of leadership brand, developing your brand, things like that, kind of that 1.0 program. And the 2.0 program is kind of an elevated version of that. So we're really focusing on making you kind of a productive member of organized optometry or your local society or whatever program you're working in. So we're focusing on things like public speaking as well, but more in the setting of media training as opposed to just your regular getting in front of a podium and talking to a crowd. So media training, we're talking about allyship and diversity, equity, and inclusion, kind of how to incorporate those things in developing your leadership skills. We're also talking about kind of more so learning about your leadership style and figuring out how to work best with other types of people. So more of kind of an elevated version of the 2.0 program, 2.0 of the 1.0 program, I'm sorry. The 2.0 program is more so focused towards people who are 10 to 15 or so years out of school or people who have completed the 1.0 program. So in our 2.0 program, we had people who were exclusively maybe under 10 years but have done the 1.0 program. We also have people who are looking at his own or fine tune step. Say if someone who's out of school for a while and you're looking to really get into uh, developing yourself more in the realm of like a board or organized optometry in any way, then the 2.0 program might make more sense for you. If you're kind of just getting started out and really want to kind of get your feet wet and get into the process of becoming the best leader possible, then the 1.0 program is probably a better idea.
And if anybody's interested in either one of those programs, reach out. I mean, you can apply online, but you can reach out
You
to
can apply
us
on,
and
yeah,
we can put your name in there. Yeah,
exactly.
for the two programs, they happen at different times. You can find out more if you just Google AOA Leadership Program 1.0 and 2.0. You can definitely reach out, message me, and I can try and get you connected to the right person.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
floor is
Yes.
yours, sir.
And any other questions can definitely be passed towards me as well. I have no problem answering those. But yeah, if you are interested, please sign up. It's a great experience. And yeah, I really enjoy being on both sides as a participant and also as a member of the committee that is organizing it. So, all right. So before I switch to the next slide and actually get things rolling here, I mentioned earlier about my professional mission when it comes to why I decided to work with Johnson & Johnson Vision. I did want to kind of put words to that and let you know what that actually is. So professionally, my mission within optometry is to create a more equitable, more inclusive profession where everyone sort of feels welcome and comfortable enough to sit at the table of change and progress, which I know there's a lot of different pauses in there, but that's the best way I can word it. I want everyone to feel comfortable enough to be in those rooms to actually work towards moving the profession forward. Oftentimes when we're in these rooms, I mean, I'm talking about since my, fourth year optometry school when I was the president, when we're in these rooms sometimes, it's like, okay, it's great that we're pushing the profession forward. We're making these steps and we're making these very broad strokes to kind of get us going, but there's an absolute lack of diverse opinions here, and we have to fix that. So my goal is to look around in those big conference rooms and see people who look like me, see people who represent other cultures and other ethnicities, and make sure that we're all contributing and not just looking a little less homogenous. All right, so here we go. So for the rest of my time, I just want to briefly touch on what J&J is doing in the advocacy space and kind of give more insight as to why I chose to sort of work with them. So whenever I talk to anyone, whether it be a Zoom session or just kind of a one-on-one, and I ask them about industry, I ask them one question. I ask them, what is it that you want to see most from our industry partners? And usually there's like a blank stare. And then I interject what I want to see. And I want to see our partners sort of go to battle for both our patients and also our profession. And I'm very pleased to say that Johnson & Johnson has a proven track record of being able to do that. And they're doing that in a couple of different ways. Number one, by supporting the profession, which we'll spend most of our time talking about tonight. Number two, by enabling our practices, creating tools that help for practice growth, and also by serving our patients by creating innovative technology that kind of continuously meets the needs of our ever-changing eye demands. But for the purpose of this tonight's conversation, I want to really focus on supporting our profession, that piece there. And so for Johnson & Johnson, supporting the profession is about strengthening the patient-doctor relationship through advocacy, service to the community, and championing diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I'm going to talk specifically about the advocacy side of things and the DEI side of things. Community is important as well, but we have a limited amount of time, and I want to make sure that I really hammer home the things that I feel the most passionate about here. So when we're talking about advocacy, we're talking about improving patient outcomes and amplifying the voices of eye care practitioners. Those are the big things that we're really focusing on when we're thinking advocacy as it relates to JJV. So kind of talking about the patients, in an ideal world, every person will have access to quality eye care and they will have comprehensive eye examinations every single year, but those aren't the facts. The facts are that 1 in 100 people actually understand the importance of having a yearly eye exam. Of people who are at risk for having vision loss, those patients who are diabetic or have glaucoma or early signs of macular degeneration, only about 50% of them report having an eye exam on a yearly basis, which is quite low. And moreover, over 1/3 of children under the age of 18 have not had an eye exam. Now, that part I'll pause because that actually relates to me. I was 18 when I had my first eye examination, and it wasn't until I went to get my driver's license that I failed the vision screening and realized I did not have the vision I thought I had. And I remember distinctly walking out of the DMV looking defeated and looking at my mom's face, and she was wondering why I was coming out so quickly. And just as a reference, at that time, my mom was a single mom. And so she worked every day. And so she took off a day of work to take me to the DMV. And when I told her my story, I remember her trying to be empathetic, but looking very frustrated at me. And I remember looking at her, because at the time I was like deathly afraid of my mom. She's a softie now, but back then she was quite scary. I remember looking at her and thinking, this is your fault. I can't see because you have not caught this. But it just goes to show you there's so many people who are so many children who have not had an eye exam who need them. And this boils down to patient education and advocacy, right? And so the numbers that we see here are reasons to believe that each of us can make a difference by talking about the importance of eye care to our patients and the impact we have on our patients' lives through legislators and policymakers. So scary numbers, but numbers that JJV and myself and doctors like yourselves are working to sort of correct. But yeah, that's definitely one of my passion points as far as getting people to know or realize the importance of eye care. Now, JJV is also leading the industry by far in healthcare advocacy to protect the patient-provider relationship and also safeguarding health. There's no other company that's doing it like they're doing it as far as advocating for our profession. And it's not just talk, it's action. And they're doing that in a couple of different ways. Number one, they're engaging policymakers and regulators, which is the point that I always try to make when I'm speaking to anyone, whether it be behind a podium or one-on-one, when people are not super happy and don't want to see reps and people talk about certain companies before their meetings. I always stop and tell them, like, hey, you do know that oftentimes when those decisions are being made and when those conversations are being had behind closed doors, optometrists aren't actually there for that. Those decisions are being made with large companies and legislators. And people like Dr. Carissa Lee are in those rooms, and we have optometrists who are working for JGV, but people who are in those actual rooms, and that is an invaluable resource to have because they're advocating for our profession and for our patients. So constantly engaging with regulators. I mean, every time I get on a call with Dr. Lee for something, she's in DC, so meeting with someone. So that just goes to show you how much work that JDV is putting behind actually making those changes with the people who get the job done. They're also supporting regulations that ensure doctors remain at the center of patient care and our patients as well. And they're advocating for policies that support regular eye visits, and also they're supporting policies that support prescriptions, honoring prescriptions that's written. So the robocall bill was a big one that we were fighting against to make sure that what patients are getting is what you prescribe, because at the end of the day, we know that contact lenses are medical devices. And then lastly, they're constantly collaborating with professional associations, AOA, NOA, all your state associations, local societies, things like that, to make sure that we're all on the same page, and then we're working together towards the common goal of making sure that eye care is accessible, but also safe and well regulated. Now, Johnson & Johnson works with leaders to advocate for patient safety and protect the patient-doctor relationship to create a better healthcare outcome for our patients. And we have a dedicated team. So that team consists of federal and state government affairs personnel. Optometrists is a part of their professional affairs committee, which is what I essentially do, and also lobbyists. So all these people are working together to advocate on behalf of all optometrists as we continue to kind of stand behind the issues that matter to our patients, such as the importance of a comprehensive eye exam, something that a lot of people don't really understand. I mean, I work at Hopkins, and I still have patients come in who don't really know why they're there. Their PCP has referred them from upstairs to come down to see us, and they don't really understand the gravity of why they need to be having eye exams and comprehensive eye examinations. And I'm sure in your practices, you see people come in and it's like, oh, I didn't really, come here for anything other than the glasses prescription. And then after you've done your patient education, you're like, wow, this is the most thorough eye exam I ever had. And meanwhile, you're barely doing anything under what you consider the bare minimum for an eye exam. And so that just goes to show you that the importance of what patients see about the comprehensive eye examination, there's a loss there, and we need to kind of connect those dots. They're also ensuring that doctors remain at the center of patient eye care. I've said that over and over and over again so far, but that's super important just to make sure that we know that the best care comes from a strong patient-doctor relationship. And with innovation and technology and eye care examination, testing, we know that things are changing, and we want to make sure that doctors stay at the center of that change. And also the no surprise prescriptions. We want to make sure that what you prescribe is what the patient has. And then lastly, raising awareness of certain epidemics like the myopia epidemic, really putting our efforts behind making sure that the public knows what's going on, and that they feel safe, and that they know that we have their best interests as far as advocacy is concerned. So yeah, this is what Johnson & Johnson is doing. It sounds simple, and it can feel ambiguous or broad, especially when you're not actively engaging with legislators or lobbying on Capitol Hill on a regular basis. But the truth is that we're kind of all advocates in a way, whether we're educating our patients or engaging with our local communities. Like we're all advocates, and we're all working to make sure our profession is being considered and that patients understand the importance of eye care health. So that's what Johnson & Johnson is doing. And below is kind of talking about their partnerships with the AOA and the Healthcare Alliance for Patient Safety, which are important as well. This slide here is just a QR code that kind of takes you to some of the key initiatives that Johnson & Johnson Vision is consistently working on. It also allows you to kind of opt in to receiving updates so that you know kind of what's going on as they're actively happening, some of the bills and regulations that they're looking to help pass. Very useful resource tool there. So if you want, you can scan that and kind of click on that later and kind of read through some of the great things that Johnson & Johnson is doing. I believe there's at least 5,000 eye healthcare practitioners who are in that loop already. So you can join in on the fun and staying informed there. All right, DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. This is a subject that I'm sure everyone on this call knows plenty about here, but it is important that we kind of go through that and talk about what Johnson & Johnson is specifically doing in that area. So when we talk about driving equity in healthcare, we know that in the U.S., underrepresented groups of color suffer from worse health outcomes, shorter life expectancy, lack of access to care, and also underrepresentation in clinical trials, which we all know is super important to developing life-saving technologies that are unbiased. In 2020, Johnson & Johnson actually launched what's called their Race to Healthcare Equity, which is a 5-year, $100 million commitment to address health inequities, putting money where their mouth is, making sure that that we're actually showing up in the ways that push diversity forward and make sure that we're ensuring that all patients are considered when we're making healthcare decisions. And when we're looking at these numbers, I won't go through them specifically, but they are significant. We know the life expectancy for Black Americans is lower when compared to our white counterparts. We know that's a problem. We know that our Hispanic patients are much less likely to be insured. That's something that I see in practice all the time, and it's always alarming, and that's something that continues to be a problem to this day. And then, like I said earlier, we know that we're underrepresented in those clinical trials, and that's vital to making sure that those healthcare technologies and those new medicines and life-saving technologies are unbiased, and they take into account considerations like body chemistry and things of that nature. So Johnson & Johnson is putting a lot of funds behind kind of helping to address some of these issues, knowing that it's not something that can be eradicated with a check, but also understanding that it is important to show in some way to make sure that things are moving in the right direction. And then also diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging are important as we think about how, as healthcare practitioners, we're striving to keep our patients at the center of what we do. And at JJV, they've made a commitment to supporting specific areas in eye care that look to embrace, celebrate, and celebrate diversity, equity, and inclusion. And they're committed to, number one, supporting and sponsoring new programs to improve representation of people of color of optometry, like the Black eye care perspective. Honestly, that's the only one that I really know much about. And so I probably should do some more research about other ones, but obviously you all are far and away leading the charge there, and I commend you for that. And Johnson & Johnson Vision is obviously super, super proud to support that. They also are creating more culturally relevant information for our eye healthcare practitioners and also their practices. And then they're also bringing in more diversity and equity into the industry. And there are a couple ways in which they're doing all of these three things. Now, with celebrating diversity, it kind of starts with increasing awareness of healthcare disparities and educating ourselves and our staffs. Now, the QR codes that you see below will take you to CME Outfitters, where you can access 2 different continuing education options on cultural competency, both of them which are supported by JJV. And I'm pretty sure if you click on that first one, health inequities and vision care, you'll see that Dr. Adam Ramsey is actually spearheading that one. So a little local hero there doing the work as far as that's concerned. But that Johnson & Johnson Vision does support those things. They're also creating resources that helps us relate to our Hispanic patients and making them feel more of a sense of belonging when they come into our practices. It's something that they've been doing for some time now, and they're readily available to the public as well. So developing those resources in English and Spanish so that our patients feel like you're there from them when they come into our offices. And then lastly, this last one is pretty new, this Empowering Diversity in Optometry. It's a series, it's an event series that was built to bring awareness to our communities, diversity in our communities within our profession. So I've actually been to a couple of these, and they're environments where they bring eye care practitioners to get together from different backgrounds, different experiences, and it creates kind of a vacuum of mentorship, of shared experiences, diverse experiences, really trying to bridge the gap and also make people more aware of the diversity that exists within our profession, kind of knock down some of those walls and really sort of bring us all together. So they've been having those since 2022. And like I said, I've been to a couple. I was asked to be on one, but it didn't quite work out with the schedule, but I was able to attend a few in our area, and they've been incredible. All walks of life. We're not just talking about racial differences. We're talking about sexual orientation differences. We're talking about all kinds of things. So it's a really cool experience to join in on if you have not yet done so. And so talking about, I guess a good way to wrap this up is I get asked a lot, like, why is it important for optometrists to support companies that support them? Which is a simple question for me because it's about shared values. We're all working towards the same goal. Some of us are able to get to that goal a lot faster by working with others. And Johnson & Johnson Vision is a good conduit for us to actually move things along a lot faster. And our goals are basically progress. We're progressing the profession forward. We're increasing patient protection. We're also increasing public safety. those are all goals that every optometrist should share. And those are goals that Johnson & Johnson Vision are continuing to kind of champion as we move forward. And I also get asked, like, why do I personally advocate for Johnson & Johnson? And for me, it's important to support companies that support you. Johnson & Johnson has been a part of my journey since I started optometry school. I've always used other products as well, but I've always kind of been geared towards Johnson & Johnson products. And to see all the work that they're doing and have been doing for years and years and years, not just when it became hot to do those things, to see what they've been doing for so long, it makes it an easy decision for me to kind of join in on that and kind of throw my hat in the ring and making sure that things are continuing to push forward. Because at the end of the day, we're all in service to our patients. The common purpose is, and that common purpose is what essentially kind of unifies us. And by choosing to partner with Johnson & Johnson and choosing products for your patients, we're achieving a goal of kind of making vision a successful and an attainable thing for all of our patients. So I hope that tonight I gave you a little bit more insight about me, as well as maybe why I'm working with the Johnson & Johnson Vision. It's a great company. I do love the work that I do with them, but it's kind of in cap my own personal thing. I think it's very important to be able to mix things up and do different things. So that's my big take home. I always tell people, whether it be my young nephews, who I have 6, or you know, optometry student, or another professional, like, live a balanced life. Like, you have to mix it up. You have to put the optometry hat down. Sometimes we get so swept up in the work that we're doing, which is some very crucial and important work, but sometimes we get so busy in that we forget to live. So live your life, and do the part that you can, and make sure that you're balancing it out with some joyfulness things as well. And that's all I got.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Now, you mentioned at the beginning you were in a fraternity, but you never said what the fraternity was.
Oh, Alpha Phi Alpha, Beta Tau chapter. Follow
Okay.
8. Yes.
I see some AKs. Esther's gonna jump in there in a second. She's wearing gold and blue right now. I see the gold. I don't know if there's some blue in there somewhere. Ansel, go ahead. Yeah. Yeah, I know. Ansel, I see a couple other ones in here, so I figured I'd give them a chance to shout themselves out. Thank you for that. Now, through your advocacy work, you just ask some questions. If anybody has a question, y'all, this is the public opinion, public jump in portion here. We'll stop the recording, and then we can Essence will stop it, and then we can talk freely.